welcome to another episode of A Seat at the Table, hosted by yours truly, Karl Singleton. We clearly understand that we are here to bring content to our viewers and listeners from those decision makers or those connected with decision makers that are in positions to marry resources with needs of our community. At this point, what I'll say is, as we continue to move forward with our various topics and discussions, you'll notice how at times we repeat some topics. If we're repeating a topic on a seat at the table, we are begging for you to pay attention to it. We understand clearly that education, proper education, not indoctrination, but proper education of our young people is dependent upon us as the elders in the community being leaders. And so some of the decision makers we're going to bring to you around the topic of the 1619 Project, as well as critical race theory, are those that are in intimate positions to impact the lives of children here in Harrisburg, throughout central Pennsylvania, throughout the state, and eventually the nation. If we as a Keystone State do it correctly, we in essence become the leaders of the nation, unlocking knowledge, etc. So that is the focus, that is the purpose. So without any further ado, I want to introduce our guest today, this evening. First is Dr. Saeeda Champion.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here, Dr. Ed. Next, we'll have Councilwoman-elect Jocelyn Ross, who is also a top-notch educator in the Harrisburg School District.
Hello, good evening, everyone. And just a small correction, I'm in Central Dauphin now, but I do still work it in the summertime with the kids. But that's okay, because I did used to work in Harrisburg.
There you go. Another loss, but we'll get to that.
Yes.
And we'll say, of course, Dr. Armenta Hinton, who is the VP over at Harrisburg Community College, dealing with diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as wearing various other hats, will be with us as well. And we have Dr. Travis Waters, who is the superintendent at the Stilton Highspire School District.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. And we have newly elected Harrisburg School Board member, is Roslyn Copeland, joining us as well.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Last but certainly not least, we have Ms. Kepsia Hawkins. Well, my son's former teacher, and so definitely have her on here because we had some great conversations long before this topic was popular. So I always valued and respected her opinion, as she was on the front lines daily in the classrooms with a plethora of young men in her class. And she's now going on to be at the Department of Education here in Pennsylvania, where she's in the area of charter schools, overseeing charter schools, public charter schools, etc. And now Dr. Hinton, I see, is we can bring her up now. Perfect. So we have everyone.
Greetings, everyone. I'm sorry, we're having a dreadful storm here.
Oh, yes. Be careful. And this obviously, yes, embarking upon us as we speak. So if for some reason we lose you, we understand that the storms are beginning to pass over various areas throughout central Pennsylvania. So we clearly understand that. One of us is lucky enough to be on vacation, so you won't have to worry about that. But, we won't say who she is, but this is she. So without, we have a hard 7:00 stop for those of you that I promised that to, so I want to honor that. But I'll just open up the floor. If you do a short intro, maybe a 10, 15-second intro of yourself, and we will just run right into maybe a soundbite of why these topics are important to you. And we'll start at the top with Dr. A.
I knew you were going to start with me. No. So Dr. Saeeda Champion, I currently serve as the director of high schools, Harrisburg School District. And I used to be the principal of the Sci-Tech campus, Harrisburg High School. So it's an honor to be here this evening. And so this is, of course, very crucial and critical to me because I'm in the business of educating young people, especially high school young people. And so this critical race theory and all of the controversy, I would say, behind it is something that we must really pay attention to, and how we're going to push forward, because it's important that we teach the truth to our children, regardless of how it makes us feel or not feel. So I know there's a lot of pushback and people saying that it's not true, and white supremacy rejects it, and et cetera. But it's important that we tell the truth in our history, and that our students get the information in front of them that is correct. They have to understand that they are valuable. And the way history is taught right now, you don't see our children. You don't see us, I should say. And so our kids don't really understand that they really are kings and queens, and that they're valuable and not what is projected every day. So I can go on and on and on. So, but thank you again for having me, Karl. Appreciate it.
No problem at all. Ms. Ross, please.
Hello, everyone. Again, yes, Jocelyn Ross. I am a third grade teacher in Central Dauphin School District. This is my 16th year as an educator. I've taught in Brooklyn, New York. Then when I came back home to Harrisburg, I was in Harrisburg School District teaching first grade at Ben Franklin. And now, as I said, I'm a third grade in Central Dauphin. And as a teacher and as an educator, I feel like the 1619 project and the critical race theory is important for our kids to learn about. And it's not just a black and white thing, but it's a society thing. And bringing reality and understanding and acknowledgement to what our past was. Because if we don't understand our past, it's very hard for us to get to our future and get to it in a realistic way and in a way of truth. So as an educator, I do try to make sure I put those things at the forefront, teaching my children the truth of what our country has been through. And I get their parents in on it too, because they're important as well. They go home to their parents and they learn from them. So while teaching our students, we must also teach their families.
Great point. As a housekeeping item for everyone, it was my mistake. I know we're pretty much zoomed down. We know most of the streamlined online rules, but if you can all mute your mics unless you're speaking. So there's various ones of us on here tonight. We're getting some feedback. So we want to make sure everyone is heard clearly. So thank you very much. So at this time, Dr. Waters, please.
Hey, good evening again. My name is Travis Waters. I'm the superintendent of the Stilton High Spire School District. I have various educational experiences in the Harrisburg School District, Susquehanna Township, and now Stilton High Spire. I also have experience as a school-based juvenile probation officer. Why this is important to me is because I believe specifically critical race theory is being used as a wedge issue. A lot of people do not understand what critical race theory is. When you ask opponents of critical race theory what it is, none of them can say what it is. And one of the conversations, Karl, we had last week, we said that some of the bills that are coming out in other states are going to be coming this way. Well, they have come this way. There's House Bill 1532 right now, which looks to ban critical race theory. So it's very important. It's here in Pennsylvania, and it's something we have to have a better understanding of so that we can advocate for justice.
Very much for that. Okay. Ms. Roslyn Copeland, please.
Yes, okay. So again, my name's Roslyn Copeland. I am currently a mother, one of 3 children of the district. Also currently I serve as a enrollment specialist for the Department of Human Services. So a majority of my background is more in the medical field. However, with medical and then being placed now on the board, I think education with the medical background of it is very important. Them 2 pieces will come together, because one thing is I'm focusing with and I don't really want to move into that, but the diagnosis. So it's really important with the critical theory is that we examine laws and being able to know why a lot of them don't cross-reference, and us, really changing the narrative. So I'm really coming to bring forth a lot of more background of what I've what I've already experienced, one with being a mother, and also with the medical background field on things that I have seen that just want to educate parents, also administration, and also our teachers as well, that we really come together. So that's really what I'm pushing forward. And as we come together as a community, I think it's really important that we all take a stand. And as Dr. said in the beginning, just be honest. The truth, we don't want to hear the truth. And the truth, we have to be honest with ourselves in order to move forward. So me, with my background and my experience as a parent, my biggest thing was to be a part of the solution and not the problem. So pretty much that's where I stand, and I'm willing to do what I can do. And I'm already working behind the scene now. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll just add one point of clarification. You were not put on that board. You earned your way, campaigned hard. So welcome. And now, Ms. Hawkins, please.
Hi, I'm Kepsia Hawkins. I've been in the field of education since about 2003. As Karl stated earlier, I did have his son, Karl Jr., for about 2 years. And right now I'm currently working for the Department of Education in the Division of Charter Schools. I just want to put this out there. Anything I say today are my own views. I don't represent the Department of Education. So just understand that what you hear come out my mouth today are Kepsia's thoughts and ideas. For me, this critical race theory and the 1619 project is really interesting because I've never been one for boxes and labels and theories, to be honest with you. In the classroom, I just always felt like, look, I have these students in front of me that may know math, may know how to read, may know social studies and science, but at the end of the day, they don't really know who they are. So my mission as a teacher and educator was always, yes, we're going to cover those academic topics, but we're going to spend just as much and even more so time-wise in learning who you are. And so to have this 1619 project and critical race theory, you have these things with actual names now, is kind of refreshing to me because now it's a hot button issue. Whereas when I was in the classroom, I'm not going to say it was frowned upon. It was encouraged, but there really wasn't. I had to create the space to do that. It wasn't just given to me by the school, by the district. I had to weave it into the curriculum. And you guys are educators, so you know what a task that is, to align everything to a standard, to justify why you're teaching it. But I think for me, the most important takeaway with this is that, yes, white fragility is real. Part of I'm gonna put it out there too, I'm very blunt. I'm not good with sugarcoating things and making them politically correct, but white fragility is real. That's what's ruining this whole thing. And we kind of all just have to get past that in order for our children to know who they are, change themselves, change the community, and therefore change the world. We have to get past hurt feelings here, because that's not what it's about. Our enslaved ancestors couldn't cry about hurt feelings, so I don't want to hear about hurt feelings now. So that's just kind of where my head is when it comes to this. So yes, thank you for having me. And hopefully I can contribute meaningful information and opinions to this conversation.
Well, I think you just set the tone. So Dr. A, I can't say Dr. A. I have to say Dr. Hinton now.
Hi, greetings, everyone. Yes, she did set the tone. Thank you. Thank you, colleague. You did set the tone. I am a vice president at HAC, yes, but I, much like the speaker right before me, am representing my own views here tonight. I am also a scholar in the field. I've done quite a bit of writing, a couple of book chapters, and this is all pre-HAC. So I've spent a lot of time working with and for educational institutions, and about 16 years abroad, in fact. In my doctoral work, my framework was critical race theory. So this isn't new to me. What is new to me, however, is why it is, as my colleague just said, such a hot button issue right now. Derek Bell talked about this 25, 30 years ago. And Kimberly Crenshaw has been talking about it for the past 15 years. I'm wondering now why it is such a taboo or hot issue, when in fact it's been with us and an underpinning of so much research. I just mentioned two of the scholars, but there's so many more. One of the other things, though, that I would like to say is that I do notice that in America, and this is only from my view of being teaching and working abroad for 15, 16 years, in America, we tend to struggle with our history. And we tend to struggle with some of the challenges that our history presents, and we don't share it. Unlike our German colleagues and others who will put it out there and absolutely say, yeah, you got to learn about this so we don't do that again. Now, I'm not saying that it's everybody in Germany, but when I lived there for about 8 years, I did see an embrace of this is the history, it's horrible, and these are things that we mustn't do again. But in America, it's different. You know, I just saw something recently that said that African Americans came here as a kind of tourism kind of thing, right? It was something that was shared with me from a colleague in Texas. It's in their curriculum. So there's a lot to unpack here, an awful lot. And so anyway, I will leave it there. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this wonderful panel.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. You know, in case you haven't noticed, there's no sugar coating at the seat at the table. So what we'll clearly say is, and we'll jump right into it, the bottom line is white privilege, white fragility is real. It does exist. And if we, as the leaders in our community, Black leaders in particular in our community, aren't comfortable with being uncomfortable and having these conversations, our kids suffer. And so we are all in leadership positions. We have, in essence, suffered enough. And I would offer one of the reasons why the history is not taught in truth and with respect, because that will come with accountability. More so than with accountability, you can't teach something as history if it's still happening. What say you? Take your shots, go. If I call you out.
I agree with you 100%. That was my first thought when I started hearing all the backlash against this is, oh, we don't want to be held accountable. We just want to say the physical shackles have been taken off. Get over it kind of thing. Move forward, pick yourself up by your bootstraps. We've heard all those terms and sayings. So I feel as though, yes, there is and again, it comes with that fragility, because in order to be accountable for something, you have to own it, as horrible as it is. And that is something that we see clearly as a country. For the most part, I don't think the United States is ready to do. So I don't want to, overrun the conversation, but I think that you're correct that it's still happening today. And yes, that's one of the reasons why you're going to get a lot of this backlash, because this fallacy, this fantasy has been given to us that, oh, we're no longer enslaved. We have equal rights, civil rights movement. We can vote, yada, yada, yada.
You had a Black president.
Yes. So you guys have made it. There's that perception. Oh, you made it. What are you complaining about? So, it's really tricky.
Let me ask this. So what's it like dealing with your colleagues? So a lot of times we couch this conversation around students, in a way where the students have to learn this. Well, no, let's take it where it belongs, at the decision-making level. What are you saying in this space with your white counterparts who have benefited from privilege, whether they know or not, have benefited from a system? Now, let's grant it, they were not enslaving people themselves. They were not slave owners themselves. Your colleagues were not, white colleagues were not slave owners themselves. However, there are still some systems in place that they benefit from. And that's the topic that needs to be, that's the discussion and the topic that has to be raised in order for us to, quote unquote, work together, quote unquote, get through it. Dr. Waters, looks like you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a lot of this, if you follow the arguments against critical race theory, a lot of it coincides with the arguments for equity. And equity is just the allocation of resources. So if you look at a lot of conservative arguments against critical race theory, the underpinnings of that is really against equity. Some of the things that you're talking about, destroying those systems in place. We know there is inequity or racism in law, in education. Critical race theory was used for the first time in 1995 with Gloria Ladson Billings. We know that Pennsylvania is inequitable as far as how it distributes education funds, and it's actually I'm not going to say it's race-based but the effects against Black and brown students is devastating as far as education funding is concerned. Is economic racism. There is, again, I mentioned healthcare. There's environmental racism, and again, so you talked about holding people accountable. Or holding the systems accountable. If people don't want to do that, then that's why we have these arguments against things like critical race theory.
I was going to agree with Dr. Waters. I'm going to say two things about that. He's right. When you look at things like this, it's always come down to power and respect, right? Power, money, and respect. Equity. They don't want to lose their power or whatever, the white power or the white man power. And that's just the bottom line. If I make things equal, then you're going to be greater than me and I'm going to lose my power. That's just the bottom line. Going back to your original question about how do we talk to our colleagues. So in Harrisburg this year, the administration, the entire administration went through cultural proficiency. And it was tough for for the colleagues, some of my white colleagues. And I had to really shake it off. I'm gonna be honest with you. I was going in it timid and I didn't want to, hurt feelings at first, but then I got to the point and I just had to be Saeeda, right? So I had to just be like, listen, your white privilege is the reason why things happen this way. And I need you to start using your white privilege. If you really don't believe this, then you have to use your white privilege. And so, a lot of conversations have started to happen with my colleagues, and I'm hoping that we can continue to move in the right direction, because you are right, Karl, that yes, we teach our students, but if we don't start dealing with the adults and getting them to understand that just because you're white, that doesn't mean I'm trying to say that you're an evil person or that you did this to us, but you have to take some ownership and understand that your white privilege is getting you through the door. I cannot do some of the things that you can do. And I have to tell my colleagues that. And they get confused sometimes. I'm like, listen, you got to remember, I can't walk in that store the same way you can walk in the store. So we just have to talk about those things and just be honest. And that's just where I'm at nowadays.
You might not be able to walk in the very building that you're principal of the same way they walk in the building because you're coming through downtown Harrisburg.
Well, I'm going to tell you this, and PDE's on this line. I remember this story real quick.
PDE on the line, Ms. Hawkins.
Not PDE. No, she's not. Boom. You know what I mean? But there was a gentleman who came in for an audit one time from PDE, and he asked to speak to the principal. And so, of course, the secretary comes to get me. And I walked to the door, to get him. And I greeted him, good morning, how are you? And he said, yeah, I asked to speak to the principal. And I said, I am the principal. I guess I can't be the principal of a succeeding school because I'm a Black woman.
Silence fills the room. Critical Race Theory, 1619 Project. Ms. Rawls, do you have something?
I do, because I've noticed there's a lot of signs up for the fire department, which is great. They need to open up for jobs or whatnot. And my father and I had a great conversation. He was like, Jocelyn, when I was growing up here in Harrisburg, you couldn't walk into the fire department as a Black man. And it sunk in for me, because it's like, why is it that so many of us don't go for those jobs? Well, first off, we weren't allowed to. So as we're being raised within our households that said, don't apply for that job, you're not going to get in. They don't accept you. So it's like even coming to that and thinking, we don't see, equal opportunities in that, just like we don't in schools. And some of the reasons is growing up, these are things we were told don't be a part of because they're not going to allow you to be. And there's that white privilege too, because they have that privilege of being that. So when you put out an all call for this, you're not going to get that many Black and brown people coming to the table because we weren't allowed to be at that table before.
And that's what that's funny. Not funny. It's interesting you mentioned that, because we did have the fire department on this show 2 weeks ago now, to announce that was opening up, because there is intentionality in recruitment of us at this point, and it has not historically been the case. We know that, we've called it out. And so now it's our turn to start taking advantage of some of those great paying career pathways, because the truth of the matter is, and it's political expediency to say it, but it is not true. Everybody's going to college. That is a lie. It is a myth. College is not for everyone. It wasn't for me. I made it for me. We have to start talking about career pathways as a way to being successful. And you can be successful through trade schools, community colleges, and or some post-secondary education certification program, so forth and so on. So I wanted to have that, this lead in with that a little bit more too, in terms of the fire department, because yes, they were here. Chief Interline and others were here on the show 2 weeks ago, because that window is now open. Ms. Copeland.
Yes, I just wanted to pretty much add that my biggest experience that I've been experiencing is, one, we know the curriculum is just not based upon our children. So we really have to change that narrative. And we know that there are, one, for the district, I've already shown, we have the resources, but they're not being used. Mm-hmm. And we have to find a better way to bring the resources and make them more accessible for our children. And, I guess my biggest issue that I had is being a parent and actually watching, your child who is a successful, he's just was a challenged child. They felt that he wasn't, he had a learning disability, and I didn't agree with that. And I was like, we got to find a better way to just say our children are diagnosed with these things and we're not giving them the full right. service to say, oh, your child is labeled as this. And I'm a prime example to say, my child is now, 17 years old, and it started at kindergarten where he was labeled as a learning disability child. I didn't agree. I followed through, and he's now going to the 10th grade at a 3.3 level, and also, at a 12th grade math level. So it's just that education portion that's what needs to be brought. Like, I feel like our parents really need to understand, is that we have a system, right? But the system is only for like a stepping stone. We shouldn't just always lean on that as our, the end of our, the end of the world. We take a step and we say we appreciate it, and now we move on. So
I knew you had to be on school board. I knew it. So glad that you were there. Dr. Hinton.
Right, Colleen. I mean, I have nothing new to add to this. These, my colleagues have covered it, except I would say that I've heard a couple of colleagues say, the curriculum isn't designed for children, or, there's a particular view of what we are supposed to look like. I would say that we do need to do a little bit of work in terms of removing that deficit lens with which they view Black colleagues, the Black experience, and our children. But the other piece of that is that I think to decolonize some of what it is that we're teaching our students is very important as well. And that is heavy lifting. That is big work. To decolonize the curriculum in ways where it's not, if you're learning about the Black experience, it's not just slavery. You rarely hear the accomplishments, the things that we did even through the struggle of slavery. We don't hear about our international presence in positive ways. We don't learn about or teach, as one said at the very beginning, I don't remember which colleague said that, but, to have the students see a reflection of themselves when it's not slavery and in a cotton field or tobacco or sugarcane or whatever. There are so many other images, but that's the only one that they give us in the curriculum. And then as you navigate and move through the curriculum, you see things like the struggle of civil rights, Black codes. You may, depending on how progressive, see lynchings, that kind of thing. But there's always a deficit lens when you are talking about or learning about the Black experience in the United States of America. And I would like us to start thinking about how we decolonize that and make it something that you do want to teach, something that a student wants to see, a moment of pride. I still struggle with some of the things that we do as a norm that we should probably not do. Something as simple as maybe not removing, but just kind of thinking about why we use an anthem by a former slaveholder, Francis Scott Keys.
Tell it.
Like, why do we still do that?
Right.
It kind of feels just kind of counterintuitive, right? And that third and fourth verse those were warnings to his enslaved to say, you know, when he called the hireling enslaved, it wasn't left to the imagination. He was very specific about, if you try to escape from me or others, you will be killed. So this is our national anthem. I'm just not really sure about it. So it sends me interesting messages. So that would be a part of the decolonizing, some of what we learn, some of what we teach, and what we allow to represent us in a broader sense.
Excellent point.
If I can add something to that.
Certainly, please.
And honestly, I think that's really the crux of the matter, is that, this is what the people who oppose things like critical race theory, the 1619 Project, do not want to happen. And so that's why they're fighting, because then you have to educate kids on what the facts are, what the truth is. So I'm going to just share some of House Bill 1532. It says that if House Bill 1532 passes, it says that if you are a public education teacher, or you teach actually in a state system, of higher education, you cannot teach that the United States or the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is fundamentally racist or sexist. So basically, if I translate that, you can't teach about systemic racism. And I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what this is all about.
So, and so again, we're not just here, we are problem solvers here, and issue highlighters, we'll say. So if you all are willing, and we're at the halfway point here, somebody that we can definitely talk to will be Senator DeSantis. He's visited this show before. He has a certain way of thinking that I think would lend itself to being on the wrong side of critical race theory. So I think if he is introduced to you all, this panel, there may be some opportunity for, although I know it's House bill right now and he's senator, for, whether it's the Representative Patty Kim and others, to be at the table of education by those educators who clearly understand what critical race theory is, what the 1619 Project is all about. So give that some thought there. We're going to take a quick commercial break, very quick, as we give you a chance to take a little sip of water or something. We'll see you on the other side of this commercial break as we continue our discussion on critical race theory, 1619 Project, so much more by our great scholars of Central Pennsylvania. Thanks for being here with us. Okay, hello and welcome back. Again, we are joined by our Central Pennsylvania scholars, educators, really nationally known, but we're going to be greedy for this evening. Just call them our Central Pennsylvania scholars. Let's transition a bit. Let's talk specifically about the reality of how this white fragility comes into play when having discussions that's outside of their comfort zone. For example, being a Black educator, being a Black professional in general, when there's colleagues who don't agree with you, and oftentimes those colleagues outnumber you, there's backlash, we'll just call it. How are you prepared? What have you encountered when you have been trying to move not only the needle, but rock the entire tanker in a way where it was benefiting those kids, those underserved communities, white, Black, classism plays a part as well in this. And I did a piece some years ago where I talked about Harrisburg being the modern day South Africa's apartheid. Although race plays a critical issue, race is not the only determining factor here. More than just as equally important as the race issue that we were dealing with here in Harrisburg was the classism issue. And so when you have that system that's in place of maintaining the status quo or permanent underbelly of working class, and those individuals not really having the realistic pathway to quote unquote economic success, there's blowback by those in the top positions, and that's really small, those decision-making positions. Most of you have challenged that system. What has that been like, and how have you overcome it and continue to push ahead daily? Because you haven't necessarily overcome that system. It's still very much entrenched in Dauphin County in particular. So how are you continuing to forge ahead, fight and not give up, and just give us some wisdom, give us some encouragement for those of us that are out here, those younger educators who are just starting to get some of that backlash. We can't afford to lose them. So help encourage them. What are some of the things you've been doing?
I know for myself, as they always say, like if we try to fight alone, it's very difficult. So fighting together is the best. So I know at my current school district in Central Dauphin, we formed a Black educators group. And together we talk to the superintendent and we talk to other administrators at different schools in our throughout our district. So we do it as one, and you know, let them know how we're feeling, the racism that we've dealt with within the district, and also that our students have. And that's how we've been trying to combat it. Now, we still have a long way to go, but we are saying something. We're speaking up where we were being quiet before, afraid of the repercussions or afraid of being fired, afraid of having a target on our back. Now it's, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to speak out about it. So I think the advice that I would give is come together with people. Don't try to fight it by yourself, but, get with a group of educators within your district, find out who the other ones are and fight it as one.
Are you all fighting at the building level or at the building level as well as at the school board level? Because right now, and this is why I'm encouraging everyone, I put something out there earlier in the day leading up to this this podcast. The budgets are being done right now. Curriculum is being paid for. There's trainings, ongoing trainings that's being done in various school districts at the local, state, and federal levels. And so this is the time, just like they're pushing a national agenda to stop the 1619 Project or critical race theory, this should be a push, not only by those of you on this call, but others as well, especially community members, to push for this. Whenever you have top leadership, that kind of majority white, that is pushing against something, that should put your red flags up to find out why it is that they're pushing against it so hard. And more importantly, through legislation that, of course, our votes, quote unquote, don't count, right? So they're pushing so hard through legislation to take your votes and not to have critical race theory. And they'll celebrate Tulsa on the 100-year anniversary of a murderous massacre, but they won't tell you who was responsible. The Black people damn sure didn't own airplanes and was given permission to fly over, on that particular day or rent them. So I'll let you all take over the show, right?
I just want to add that they won't tell you, not only will they not tell you who's responsible, they will not tell you who benefited and is benefiting to this day.
Right.
And who funded it, because we know the money matters. They will never talk about, again, who funded it, who helped organize it. I just feel like I wanted to say something real quick to my educators who are out there in schools where you are the only teacher of color, because I've been in that situation. So I agree 100% with Jocelyn. Find other people that you can partner up with. But when there really isn't anybody else, when I was in that situation, it was simply just, okay, Kepsia, how strong are you? How bad do you want this? These kids are worth it. This is something I believe in my soul. I don't know, and Karl knows this because he knows how I ran my classroom. And I don't expect everyone to be like me at all, but I wasn't afraid of losing my job. I said, if me doing this and educating these children cost me my job, then I did exactly what I was supposed to do. So for me, that fear wasn't there. And again, I understand that's not everyone, but if you are alone, try to get on social media and find like-minded people. But don't feel like you have to be quiet because you are alone. I mean, us on the panel now, I guess reach out. I'm putting myself out there. If you're an educator that's alone in a building, you're the only person of color, no one will listen to you, reach out to me. We can talk and I can provide some support and help you, get you in touch with other people. We need to, as Black people and Black educators, we need to do better with networking. We need to do better with connecting, which is one of the reasons I'm so excited about this show, because it helps us to do that. But I know I took us off and back to the other question, but I did just want to say that because I have been in a situation where literally it was nobody else. I had a coworker tell me that I shouldn't be so angry. I wasn't angry. I'm just passionate. I shouldn't be so angry about these things of the past because they didn't happen to me and I didn't know any of them. So these are, that's the kind of mentality that we're having to deal with colleagues. So it can be very isolating and it is difficult, but for me, I called on the power of my ancestors in this universe and they saw me through. And I would hope that the kids that I poured into, remember that and just benefit from that. It really does start with the teachers. You're on the front line. You decide what these kids are taught and indoctrinated with, if you get what I'm saying. I had a colleague who decided it was a good idea to plaster Ronald Reagan, George Bush, and Donald Trump political signs all over their classroom. No, that's not going to work. You have to be very aware of where you're teaching, the community that you are a part of. And one issue I know I ran into, not to be long-winded, I'm about to stop, but when I started teaching kids about how the world perceives them, as opposed to who they really are, I got backlash from that from parents. I had to write letters of apology. So again, and I know someone said it before, we've got to educate the parents in the community, because when you have someone such as myself who knows the history way before slavery, I'm going to pass that on. And I'm going to make sure these kids know that, no, you might not all technically come from kings and queens in Africa, but you had architects and doctors and this, that, and the other. And that's where we come from. We were regular folks that were enslaved. I don't even use the term slaves because to me, words matter. So I think as Black educators and people in positions of power, we need to make a more conscious effort to mind the words that we use, because those do have power. So again, don't want to be too lengthy and too long, but reach out, find someone. Like I said, myself, I'm sure Karl will be willing, anyone on this panel will be willing to provide support, but there's things we have to do within ourselves and also, with our allies.
And we'll say, yeah, definitely with the allies. And then we can't forget those that are in decision-making positions that look like us, that fall victim to the illusion of inclusion, will hold us back as well. So we're fighting a fight on multiple fronts, but our job becomes or remains to keep those blinders on, clearly understanding that we have to remain focused on the task at hand, which is ensuring our students, our young people, have this bright future. Dr. A, I know you're ready to go.
No, I just have to agree with Jocelyn and Kepsia. Like, the bottom line is this: you have to look at our babies, and that's, everyone knows these are our babies. These are our children. We have to invest in them and realize that they have hope in the future because someone invested in each and every one of us. And I'm going to tell you, it is our responsibility to also be excellent. And I say that because sometimes as Black individuals, we're not always excellent. Sometimes people say I'm petty and I'm bougie because I want you to come to work on time and also, dress the part and be excellent. And so therefore, I'm petty and I'm bougie, and that's from my own people. So if we're going to be able to fight this system and fight all of this and present a united front, we have to do it together. We have to work together and stop tearing down one another. And so in front of our children, because you said about the inclusion, the falsehood of inclusion, Karl, that happens way too often. And we're never included in my eyes until we all of us continue to work together.
Great point. Excellent point. And
yeah,
I was going to say.
And I just would pretty much, add to that is that we have to address these issues, right? We address them, but like I said, what I'm not saying is that we're okay with continuing to use, like you said, the power of the words that we use, that's what we start to think, that's who we are. So, even in, this is just my own view, right? So it's just, even as we say small business, just say business owners, we have to really change our words on what we say, and then that's what we become. And when you know who you are, and we get to the root of it, then all we have to do, as we do come together, then we can open up the doors. And like I said, I'm out here talking to banks now, like, what is it that you can come, bring to our school? What is it that you can teach our children? And not just for an adult or a 9th through a 12th grade, no, kindergarten on up, because we remember things as we're young, and them things stick with us. So if we remember them and, years, years pass by, then we can say, oh, this, I did remember that, or I was taught that. But if you don't remember it and then you're already 9th to 12th grade, you're about to get out and you have no background of not even how to write, what's a checking or a savings account. Like, it's just the little things that I'm like, why is this not being taught? And I can add to what was my fight, right, for my own experiences. It was hard, but you know what? I fought them with their own systems. I educated myself on the policies, the regulations. And I was like, okay, so you said this, but in your policy, it states this. So is this wrong? Or maybe am I not reading it clear? And then they'll have to reevaluate. Oh, well, we didn't see that. Okay. So that was like my fight. And like I said, it's not easy because then you have to know someone. So it's like, if I can't get through this door, you don't stop. And that same, energy that I brought as a parent, I want to teach parents, we need to know our rights. Our children are our future. And if we're not educating them, then where is the generational wealth? And we keep saying that it's not generational. We've been had generational wealth. We need to go back and take it. And it's time. So I'm excited to go out and fight, and I'm going to fight, and it's going to be done. And like I said, it's just not for our district. This needs to go national, because what they do, they base our children's education, PSSAs, that's a national level. But if you want to make it national, then you need to make sure our children has the resources from a national level. So
Agreed.
I get all excited. Sorry.
No, hey, that's what the show is all about. And what I heard was a lot, especially with that decolonization of the curriculum, the money, power, and respect. Kind of sound like a rap song from some time ago, but it's still applicable here. And of course, that pushback that we know is coming. Be prepared as a unified front to not only accept it, not saying accept it, but to confront it with being properly educated on the facts, with the facts, to say, in fact, here's what we will do. Here's what we will be doing. And there's no mistake that you all are invited on here with regards to whether it's Harrisburg Community College, professionals. And I know you're speaking for yourselves at this point, but in terms of the systems that we are all a part of or all in, I think what we have to continue to do is to understand that at the end of the day, no matter what position we're in, no matter what positions or titles we have, if we don't unify for the right reason. Now, I'm not saying, and I'm a big believer, I don't think everybody's invited to the cookout. Everybody does not get invited. I mean, Black people as well. I like the Mau Maus, and they're, by day, there's certain things that were going on in the community. At night, during the day, the Mau Maus was dressed a certain way. At night, if things weren't going well in the community, dressed a different way. And now that problem was no longer in the community. I'm just simply saying, not advocating for violence, but we, as leaders in our community, have to take control, not only in the daylight, but in the darkness as well, because we know what's going on 24/7, because we listen, we hear, we have connections. Some of them are our family members. And so what we need to do is make sure that we take our rightful place as leaders, that we are unapologetically biased and definitely unafraid. So I want to give you all a chance, respecting your time, to have closing remarks. But if you could couch them around the importance, what is the importance of the 1619 project? What is the importance of teaching and having available, even if it's not taught with fidelity by all, just to have it made available to be taught? The 1619 project. Critical race theory for our students, our young people who are suffering immensely, has suffered historically. And I want to start with Ms. Rawls out of Central Dauphin, because I shout out, I'm a big fan of Dr. Amber Sessoms, who did her dissertation around this, and Central Dauphin lost a damn gem.
Yes,
they lose it, they pushed her out, to be real with it. And
I plead the fifth because I have to.
Yes. No, I'm saying this. They pushed her out, and but thank you. They pushed her out. They pushed Micah Parsons out, and look, everybody's benefiting. Hopefully, you get pushed out too. You'll be even. No, I'm just joking. But at the same time, what I want to say is understanding the important role that you play. I want you to leave us with why you believe 1619 Project, critical race theory, etc., is very important to be taught in our schools for the sake of our children.
1619 Project, critical race theory, anything that deals with race relations, especially with America's past, are important because, as I said in my opening, if we don't know where we came from, how are we going to know where we're going? It's imperative that we understand our past. It's imperative that we acknowledge it. And I like what Dr. A said, more than just slaves, because we were much more than that. And I believe it's time for us to understand that, and it's time for America to acknowledge that, because they haven't acknowledged it. And every time a bill comes up in legislation or wants to be passed, it's because it's that white privilege afraid of us that we're rising too high. Those Negroes are getting out of their place. But all we want to do is finally get noticed, and we're not Negroes. You can call us Black, but we're not Negroes. We're not coons. We're not any of that. And I think what's important is that our children know who they are and where they come from, although we can't trace but so far back because we weren't important enough to keep records enough on. But, trying to find that path of where we are and seeing that we can succeed even higher. Because I just want to touch on something real quick. When I watched the Tulsa massacre, the one thing that I saw that came out of it is there was a hotel owner, and I don't want to missay his name, but he owned one of the largest hotels there. His children could have been trust fund babies. He could have been the Hilton, but it was taken and never rebuilt. Dreamland Theater could have been AMC, was never able to rebuild in its proper way. So we had that, and it was taken and never given back, and no one was ever held accountable. So now it's time to turn that leaf and do something better.
Amen. Thank you. Dr. Waters, I know you have the hardest stop at 7. If you go, please.
Yeah, so I think if you do not teach history I'm some factual history, it's educational malpractice. Carter G. Woodson, I'm going to use the word Negro, the miseducation of the Negro, and there's a whole lot of that going on, even with a lot of our own people. So if you don't teach stuff like the impact, the long-term impact of Jim Crow, Black Code, slavery, what happens, you have these systems that are in place and no one will ever challenge these systems. We'll just think that, okay, everything happens in a vacuum. You have Black people here, and someone mentioned they need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Look at them in masses. They're creating crimes, and you don't understand how we got to where we are, and then destruct those systems so that we have true equity in this country.
Thank you very much. Dr. A.
So I appreciate everything everyone is saying. I'm just going to kind of shift it a little bit. So the significance of the 1619 Project to me is that brilliant sister reframed history in a way that shows the effects of what happened to our ancestors in a way that you can see it from the economic impact, the psychological impact, the health impact. So she framed it in a way that had not been considered. Now, we understand it. We talk about it in small spaces, but she put it out there on the table for everyone. By doing so, she empowered a way of thinking. She reframed the conversation. And I like that she reframed the conversation. And here's where I depart from a lot of people. The work seems to be burdened on our shoulder to fix something we did not create. I don't know about y'all, but I'm tired.
Yeah.
I didn't create this problem. It was done to us, and yet we rose above it in some magnificent ways. Looking at what you're doing here, all of us have a story. All of us have a narrative. And we can all kind of trace back our history some way or another. And you all know we had many hills to climb to be sitting where we are. And there's so many people working against us, and yet they want to throw on our shoulders the burden of our mere existence and saying, well, we don't want to really talk about how you really got here. Well, how can you avoid it? And here's the other piece of that narrative that's coming from our legislators who do not want this to be taught. It is, as my colleague said, educational malpractice, but it's also a type of intentional deceit. And the last thing I want to say is they have to, this benign neglect and willful ignorance is no longer okay. There has to be a reckoning with these things were done. We weren't doing them to ourselves. So it really needn't be laid at our feet to fix it or to educate. The system needs to be changed so that we can learn about the atrocities. Let's no longer celebrate Columbus Day. He was a monster. By all accounts in history, all accounts, from the Smithsonian, anywhere you turn, you can read the accounts of how this man was a monster and what he did. And yet we celebrate a day. Bank holiday, isn't it? There are times when I think we mustn't bury our head in the sand. When I say we, I mean the United States. And we mustn't blame or lay the foundation and the responsibility of teaching and changing the way history is taught at the feet of those who were most aggrieved by it. It's just on our responsibility. It wasn't created by us. It happened to us. Right. It also didn't stop anything, evidenced by these wonderful people on this panel. There's a spirit there that excites me, right? That we can rise, it seems, above so much adversity. But on this issue, I have to kind of dig in and say, I don't want this burden. I believe this is a Department of Education. I mean, our new president is making some strides. Can our Secretary of Education make a decision to teach history in its entirety, a fair and equitable storytelling? Should we teach these things as they should be? It should not be a political issue, right? At some point, who lobbied for the Trail of Tears to be taught? Someone had to, obviously. Nobody was going to tell that story on their own on the face of it. Surely not. So much like that, I believe that I think we're talking to the wrong people. The politicians are not going to do anything that's going to make them look or seem bad. But I do know that the educational process, we have a whole Department of Education. And if they really want to prove that they are striving to be anti-racist, teach the 1619 Project. Make it a mandatory moment in our classrooms. Make it something that is a part of how we educate the United States. And stop putting the onus and responsibility on every Black person. How many of you, and I know we all have to go, but how many of you, especially after the murder of George Floyd, had your white colleagues say, help me be better. Teach me what I'm doing wrong. Well, Google it. I mean, I'm not saying that.
No, you're on.
I'm going to stop.
Sick and tired of being sick and tired. You're right.
I'm tired. Yes.
You're allowed to be. I mean, we are allowed to be. And that is great. Those are great points. We laugh because we were all thinking the same thing. You know, if you want to know how to be anti-racist, Google it, man. Buy a book. Is that what you tell us? You know, so, yeah, you're spot on, as always. Dr. A. Jr.
I'll take that. That's a compliment. Thank you. I mean, I just have to agree with everyone, Karl. I mean, everyone has basically said it. And so the bottom line is why should we do it? Every day I look in the children's eyes, right? I look in our future every single day that I walk in those doors and I do what I have to do. It's the reason why I get up every day. It's the reason why I didn't stop going to work when I battled stage 3 cancer. Like that is the reason why, right? Because every day our children are worth it. And just like I tell them, I'm going to tell you, it's important to teach it because why are they trying to hide it? Because it's so powerful, because we are so powerful. Why didn't they tell you that? Because they didn't want you to rise up. There's a fear. There's a fear that the greatness in us as people, right, will actually overpower them instead of joining hand to hand. And we don't have to overpower. We can join hand to hand, but there's that fear. And so that means there is something great buried deep inside each and every one of us that people just don't want to unleash in America because they're fearful of what may happen, even though we continue to do it in spite of. So I agree with everyone. And I just ask everyone to just keep fighting and remember that our children need us, every single one of our children. They need each and every one of us to continue this battle.
On that note is, a good lawyer friend of mine would always say, it's not the crime that people go to jail for. It's really not the crime. It's the cover up. And so it's not only our greatness that they fear, and it was what they were fearing, but they've decided to try to cover it up. That is making us want to dig more and more to illuminate more and more of our greatness. So that cover up that they've conspired behind we're breaking through, and we've been breaking through. They just now, thanks to internet, Music Man Multimedia Studios, we have a platform to unleash it all. And this is just the beginning. Ms. Copeland, please.
Yes, and I just want to thank everybody again and add to it's important that it's crucial that we have the education, the curriculum, the system change. We have to change the narrative, and changing the narrative is getting to the root. And I say the root is being accountable, acknowledging, the wrong. And now that we know that, it's wrong. So go ahead and change the narrative and, bring it into the system. And, I look at my children every day, and that is what my fight is, because I get to look at them and I get to say, I don't give up, because, when I'm going, this is for you guys. This is for you. And you continue this on. And, just to look at my daughter, only 8 years old, right? Her first year, in kindergarten, what she told the teacher, she didn't like recess and couldn't stand lunch. And I'm like, these are the most important, that we love when we get to eat lunch or we get to play outside. She said, no, I would like the privilege to help the teacher grade the work. So I'm like, wow. So that right there was like, okay, Roslyn, you got to step it up, because it's not just my daughter, it's all of our children, and our younger generation, they're ready. And we got to be ready to, and I'm ready to get in there and attack it. And like I said, even with our educators, we don't want to, they know if they done wrong, and it's time out for sweeping things under the rug. It's time out because I had to address them face to face with their own system and show them, you say this, but show me where this child was so bad. And one thing is I've noticed they don't have no relationship with our children. They just think, there's such and such, or that's the black little boy, or that's the little Latino that don't speak English. And it's like time out. We got to change the narrative. God made us all one human, one race. We are one human being to do the will. The will is us coming together, and it's time out, and it's time to bring the project forward. And then it can be done. And like I said, I think this is a great panel because we're able to share information, and we start gathering, we start doing it, but we don't just start doing it on a level from our administration side of it, our work level. We do it off the clock. That's right. Because if you're doing it off the clock, then we still create another service outside with our local, community leaders, but we have to stay informed. And like I said, us coming together, and really a lot of things that are happening, even June 9th, Juneteenth is coming up, it's here. So it's happening, and we got this. We going to stand strong. And like I said, I thank you all. And it's important that we get it out there. We don't be afraid. And like I said, I'm not afraid. I wouldn't have seen myself in a million years sitting here, but I say, God, if this is what you want, let your will be done, and I'll go out and do what I need to do. So I'm excited. And like I said, it's going to happen. So I'm speaking it into existence. It's already being done as we're preparing and coming together. So thank you all, and have a blessed one tonight.
And on that note, Dr. Hawkins to be.
For me, this has to be taught, because not only does it show the youth that we have fought in the past, it shows the youth that we come from an incredible lineage of people that have overcome everything. It shows that we are the most adaptable people in the world. It does not matter what you do to us, what you take from us, how you divide us and put us with people who speak different languages. It doesn't matter. We're going to overcome. And I think as our kids learn that, they're going to realize the small day-to-day victories. And that's where the fear comes in. They don't want our kids to realize that by me getting up and doing this perceived small act of going to school, that's a victory for me because my ancestors couldn't do that. So they don't want our children to start connecting those dots and seeing that they are the success of our ancestors. That is what we are. Yes, there's more growth and things to be done, but we're that living success right now. I find it hard to believe that any of those enslaved ancestors would come back right now and say they're disappointed in me. Not going to happen. So I feel like the pushback, of course, is fear-based. We all know that it's emotional. It's not factually based. And I just think we need more educators out there that are going to show these kids that you living and breathing is the victory. Now let's go achieve something else. So they just don't want them to see the victories in what they do from day to day. You going to work is the victory. You reading is the victory. You having a great conversation with your mom or dad or neighbor, whatever, is the victory. And we have to start getting our kids to see that. Every day I have a victory. It's not when I do this and when, no, your victory is every single day. My ancestors who might have picked cotton, their victory was every single day when they put their head down to sleep, if they got a chance to do so, and got up the next morning. Every day you have to find your victory. And the more our kids learn about how we've overcome everything that has been thrown at us, there is not a time in history where something was thrown at Black people and we crumbled. Never happened, not going to. So the powers that be, those that oppose this, don't want our kids to see the power that is already in them. I'm not one who believes we have to put that in them. It's already there. They just have to see it. So that's my little spiel. I love critical race theory, 1619 Project. I'm here for it all day, every day. You know that. So I just want any child who's listening to this, any parent who's listening to this, make sure you tell your child and help them see the victories that they accomplish every single day, because that will snowball and give them that momentum to lead to the larger victories that we hold on to, the high school graduation, the college graduate, whatever it is. But these small victories, you got to start somewhere. And once we start teaching this material, there's no going back. Exactly. Once you see your greatness, there's no unseeing your greatness. So I think that's where this comes from. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone on the panel. You guys are amazing. And that's my little spiel. I could say so much more, but I'm not going to. But yes, have a wonderful night, everybody.
Well, we will say this, as Dr. King once said, two most dangerous things on this planet is sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. None of that is represented on this call. However, we know we have to fight that every day. What is represented on this call, on this particular podcast, is those who clearly see and clearly get up to Ms. Hawkins' point. We clearly have bought into the fact that we can plant a seed for a tree to grow, understanding that we may not benefit from its shade. And that's how we continue to push forward, continue to look out for our young people, our kids, and our community. And of course, I just value and appreciate all of you for taking the time out this evening. And it's only one way out. And none of y'all are dying anytime soon. So we're going to continue to roll you back onto, the program. This podcast, I'm sure, will continue to have some excellent comments. We ask you in the comment section, we ask you if you could to join in and engage our viewers even after we sign off here officially, but via Facebook and eventually on YouTube as well. It'll be loaded there to comment, see what goes on. The conversation continues. Again, we just like to thank you. Shout out to the Lewis brothers here at Music Man Multimedia Studios, as well as Chad, the District Lounge and Grill. So we'll see you in the next episode of Seat at the Table, hosted by yours truly, Karl Singleton. And I purposely did not touch on Ocean City, Maryland today, because I'm sure that's going to be coming up real soon, everything that's going on. So thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.